beds, 2 baths. Why is rent so expensive? What do people do for a living to be able to afford this? For example, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 800 square feet is $2,500 a month. 2 beds, 2 baths, 1,000 square feet, $2,500 a month. 2 beds, 2 baths, 1,200 square feet, $2,795 a month. What? Okay, here's one below 2,000. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 699 square feet for $1,995 a month. 3 beds, 2.5 baths, 2,200 square feet, so not that bad, for $5,200 a month. It's a townhouse. 2 beds, 2 baths, 966 square feet, $2,395 a month. Come on, I don't understand. 3 beds, 1 bath, come on, for $2,200 a month, and that's for 1,000 square feet. I want to live in a place that I'm happy in, that I feel safe in. Does anybody else have this problem?
Why does rent have to go up every year, but my salary doesn't? Sad face. That's really disappointing. So if we look back to 1995 to now, the percentage increase is almost 100% increase in the amount of rent people are paying. But income doesn't increase as quickly. Of course, rents increase with inflation, but this is more than that. A lot of the low-cost units are disappearing from the market because they have transitioned to luxury housing. Landlords are charging more and more based on upgrades they've made, or they've transitioned to for-sale homes. There's also been an increase in what's called institutional investment. These are corporations buying up homes and also multifamily residential buildings to rent them out to make a profit. In 2001, only about 18% of rental units were owned by corporations. Today, that's about 50%. So it's really likely that you're paying your rent to a corporate landlord.
I want to know who they're pricing these expensive ass apartments for. Who are they pricing it for? Because there's no way that I can't find a 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom for lower than $2,300 that's actually decent. No roaches, no rats. We should not be in a state where minimum wage workers have to live with 3 to 4 people in order to afford to live. Everyone at minimum should be able to afford to live alone. Period.
How are we supposed to buy a house when my rent is going up another $195 a month? It has gone up $720 in 4 years for the same place that I live in. $8,640 a year more for the same place I lived in 4 years ago. I'm sorry, property taxes are not going up that much that landlords are charging that much more. We have to stop blaming the economy, the government, the president. It is greedy people taking more profits in. When people tell you, just move somewhere else, why would I move to another state that's cheaper? Why should I have to uproot my family, lose my career, just to afford to live somewhere? You're implying people who live in where I live now don't deserve a fair shot at cost of living. And places with cheaper rent pay lower salaries. That's how this whole thing works for the most part. And my girlfriend's a teacher. Like, if she moves to a state with a cheaper cost of living, she might not even have a pension or her benefits anymore. Instead of telling the middle class to keep, looking somewhere cheaper, why don't you all align together and get people out of control that are doing this to us? You are always closer to being homeless than you are to being rich. Everyone just assumes one day they're going to get rich. And that's why they don't stand up for people just like them in the struggle right now. If not for the raise I got 4 years ago, I would be totally screwed. I don't even want to hand out or help. I just want things to not be so crazy expensive every year. Go buy pizza from where I work. Go buy my merchandise. I don't know. Not a handout, just advertising. What was your life like 4 years ago? Vote accordingly. 4 years ago, hospitals were renting out freezers to fill up all the dead bodies. So many people died of COVID every single day they were being put in the freezers. They'll tell you gas was cheap without telling you that no one drove anywhere. The world got put on hold. That guy also had inherited a good economy from someone who passed legislation for the 8 years before he got into office. He did give some tax cuts that were temporary to the middle class, but he gave tax cuts to the billionaires permanently.
My rent is going up almost $300 a month, okay? I'm confused. I'm lost, dumbfounded. Everywhere in my city, everybody going up in apartments, okay? These are just one bedrooms. I pay $1,100 a month for one bedroom right now. If I resign my lease, it'd be $1,300, okay? Not including maintenance fees, not including all the utilities and all that stuff. When all said and done, I'll be spending $1,600, $1,700 to live there, okay? When all said and done. My thing is, what do these landlords think we're making out here, okay? Everybody not making all that kind of money like this. I'm a truck driver. As you can see, I'm in the truck right now. Truck drivers don't get raises, okay? We don't get raises. I barely made enough to make 3 times the rent already. But now it's just going up. I don't know what's gonna happen. I make $4 grand a month. I don't know. Well, I make that by the taxes and all that, you know how that goes. It's about 36, something like that. I won't be able to afford that place anymore where I live at right now. So I gotta move. I'm probably considering living in my truck maybe. Might get hotel rooms on weekends. If I get hotels on weekends, I spend $508 a month just for Saturdays and Sundays. That saved me a lot of money, about $1,000 a month, just doing that. Cause I'm gone most of the time anyway. But my big concern is I don't know where these landlords, how they think we out here making all this money to raise the rent that high. We got layoffs going on, and the federal workers are getting laid off, and it just, things gotta change, you know. I refuse to pay that much for one bedroom, so I'm not doing that. I've been looking around my city. A lot of folks moving in the city, so I guess, you know, supply and demand is what raised the prices up. But I've been in my city my whole life, and they trying to push us out. I'd rather be straightforward and say that. We're gonna push everyone that's a native of this city, who's born and raised here. We're gonna push y'all out. They want everybody to come in here and raise prices. I'd rather be straightforward and just say that, okay, than just raising prices and we just all confused, all right? I mean, it's just crazy to me. But I probably might live in my truck, get hotel rooms on the weekends, have a lot of money that way. Because this year I'm trying to save 20 grand, and a lot of folks can't save 1 grand because you got all the bills, and like I said, rent prices are going up, and food prices going up, clothes, everything's going up in America right now, okay? There's no relief anywhere, it seems like. They don't think it'll be a relief anytime soon. So I gotta be prepared trying to save some money up, because money is king, and I gotta make it happen. What you gotta think about this? This is getting insane. I mean, something gotta give, they really do.
We are in the bad place. No hate, no shade to this poor lady who's trying to do her job. But I looked this up. Apparently this is in Boston. What do you mean y'all are paying $3,600 for a 1-bedroom apartment? New England prices are already hell on earth, but y'all, it's that rough over there in Boston? $3,600 for a 1-bedroom apartment? That is a mortgage price for a big house in the burbs where I'm from. Are you joking? Like, I kid you not. For that much money, you could literally have a pool in your backyard in the suburbs of Philadelphia. You could probably buy acres of land somewhere down south too. But it's getting out of hand because, you know, a lot of the time people have no choice but to live where they live. But $3,600 for an apartment.
These rent prices are unbelievable, bro. What? We've literally spent weeks upon weeks, days upon days, touring, looking at different places, and they done lost their mind, bro. Like, what have we came to as a society for rent to be $2,000 plus for a 1-bedroom apartment? Like, what are we talking about? And the square footage is under 1,000. Like, I don't understand what's going on. I mean, I know why the prices are high, but it's just like, it doesn't make sense, you know, like just a basic cost of living, like just a place to sleep. You're talking about $2,000 for a 1-bedroom. I mean, I've seen a 2-bedroom go for $3,000. We got to figure something out as a country, as a whole, as a unit, whatever, bro. Like, this doesn't make sense. And they wonder why people are not having kids right now, bro. Like, it's expensive to just feed yourself. It's expensive to just breathe and just to be alive. It's very expensive, bro. But dang, I ain't never seen no prices this high. Like before COVID, I mean, you can get a 2-bedroom for, you know, a good price, you know, way more affordable than what it is now. So I'm interested to see how things are going to, you know, develop as this new administration get in office.
I don't think that rent prices are ever coming down. But then again, it depends on the area that you're in. In order for rent prices to come down, the value of the properties themselves have to come down. And a lot of people don't understand that. And I'm going to explain that in the next video because he actually has a follow-up video to this. So make sure y'all tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description. I'm going to link back to the content creator because I always like to give credit. It's the right thing to do. But I don't think the administration has anything to do with the rent prices. The rent prices are set by the market. The value of something is based off of the demand of it. It's what people are willing to pay for it. Now, some people now, and it depends, right? So I'm going to break it down in a few different ways. The first way that I'm going to break it down is that when you start to go into certain areas, right? Certain cities, have astronomical rent prices because you are paying for the weather, you're paying for the lifestyle, you're paying for the development, you're paying for the area that you're in. You know, if you go to a more central location, let's take a Miami, right? You go down to Miami, and if the closer you are to the action, the closer you are to the design district, the closer you are to South Beach, the closer you are to Biscayne, the closer you are to Brickell, the closer you are, and Biscayne is a street that runs back and forth all the way up to downtown Miami, back through Midtown and the design district, and then obviously you got Wynwood over there. And so Wynwood used to be a cheaper area, right? Because it was an area that was a little bit more depressed. You had Wynwood Walls over there. It wasn't even costing anything. And now Wynwood, they have so many structures because everybody want to move to Miami. And so when you get one of those high rises, what happens is the cost of living goes up significantly because the rent prices go up. Same thing for New York. You know, New York is a rent controlled city. So when they finally get the opportunity to move everybody out and then eventually hike up the rent, they will. They absolutely will, because they know that it's going to be rent controlled as far as how much they can up the prices depending on where you're trying to live at. Now, I don't know, where he never stated the area that he was living in, but $2,000 for a 1-bedroom apartment, that's not unheard of. But if you move a little bit further out, if you move into certain areas, again, any major city, you are going to be paying for that. Now, most of the time in the major cities, you also have public transportation, which is supposed to, limit the cost of what it costs to live on a day-to-day basis. A lot of people don't like to cook for themselves anymore, so a lot of times they order out, they do DoorDash, Uber Eats. So a lot of times you're paying for convenience, you're paying for amenities, you're paying for a lot of the things in these locations that you're living in if you buy an apartment. As far as homes, that's a completely different conversation, and so I'll go into that in a little bit. But it is a lot that goes into the equation of what people are paying and they rent. And again, it depends on the area that you're in. It depends on if you want to have these high-end amenities. You can absolutely find things at a lower budget, but people are not willing to go down. They think that they deserve the same thing as everybody else. And historically, even when I was younger in the 90s and the 2000s, rent was significantly lower, but you didn't get as much quality. You may have to go in a little bit, sketchier of an area, but you can find that in any city. Most of the time, people just want the best of the best in the luxury, and they expect them to pay 1990, 2000, and 2010 prices. It's absolutely not going to happen. But here's a follow-up after people apparently was commenting in his comments talking about, rent too high, so on and so forth. This is what he had to say.
It sucks, but people are really drowning right now. Looking at the comments for my video about rent prices was honestly depressing. There's so many people out there that are in these situations, these circumstances where they can't afford their rent. Some of the prices that people were saying for the square footage that they were getting is insane. And I think this tells us one thing, that a lot of people are struggling financially. And let this be a reminder that you should take what you see on social media with a grain of salt. Somebody just got a new car, they, going on vacations. It's not to say that people can't afford to do these things right now, but just take it with a grain of salt, because most likely they're struggling, they're drowning too. I've even seen people comment down below saying oh, should we still be paying 50-50? Should it be the man 100%? And hey, I may tell you a joke, but I never tell you a lie, man. 2 incomes is more than one, especially during these times. Comment down below what your rent prices are in your city, because people need to see that this is all over. It's not just where you're at. And
yes and no. There's a lot of people getting money. It's a lot of people getting a lot of money out here. And I'm just telling you that sometimes when you pay to stay in certain buildings, when you go in certain places, when you pay membership fees to go to certain gyms and to certain social clubs and all of that, you are also paying for the opportunity to be around other people that's getting money so that you can get more money based off of whatever value that you offer, and then y'all partner up and so on and so forth, building that relationship. Everybody not broke. I'm just telling you, there's a big divide between the haves and the have-nots. And I think that the middle class is going away, which is one of the reasons why a lot of people are complaining about rent. Let me also add something in there because a lot of people don't understand that one of the reasons why rent prices also go up, especially for single family homes and for buildings, is because property taxes go up, right? So the cost of doing business, the interest rates are higher, which is something that I think that Trump is going to help get under control based off of some of the decisions and the policy decisions that he make, and the Fed lowering interest rates, which doesn't necessarily mean that the rent prices necessarily go lower, because again, demand jumps up when money is loose, right? So it's really just a calculation. It's a yin and a yang. But I do think that there's a lot of people struggling. A lot of those reasons is because they're self-inflicted wounds. People have student loans. People have a lot of credit card debt. People make bad decisions. They go on vacations. They finance everything with Klarna. And they look at their budget based off of what they can pay. They don't do it based off of what makes sense or the interest rate, or it doesn't make, I don't need to buy this to impress people or whatever. Honestly, if I wasn't in the position that I was in, and if I was just doing okay, and I can live, work, and play in the same area, I would probably catch public transportation. That would be a part of the cost that I eliminate. I'm eliminating gas. I'm eliminating insurance. I'm eliminating maintenance, car notes, all of that stuff, right? So I just think that it's a lot that goes into it. Yes, people are struggling a little bit, and no, some people aren't struggling, and a lot of people are struggling because they have self-inflicted wounds. But you also got to understand that a lot of these places, single-family homes and stuff, most people that are renting out their properties to you, they only have one or two homes. They have to carry that mortgage anytime it's empty and a lot of that stuff. So, it's a lot that goes into it. I'm curious as to what y'all think. Do you think that rent prices are too high? And let me know inside of the comments. Again, I always like to link back to the content creator. And then make sure y'all tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. I'm out.
Canadians are cashing out their American vacation homes. This is what I talked about before. People are selling their vacation properties and their investment properties. This is going to happen in this kind of financial situation, in this kind of market, not to mention the atmosphere with the trade war, where people are literally afraid to come to the United States. But this is just the first shot in this. You're going to see people selling vacation homes. Next, it's the investment homes, the investment condos, the Airbnbs. The markets are going to get flooded with real estate, and the interest rates are going to be way too high for anybody to get a loan. So if you have cash you've been saving, you could get yourself a deal in the near future.
In case you guys are wondering how looking for a house is going to go right now, me and Lauren have been looking for 3 months. Every weekend. It's taken away from our content stuff, videos, whatever. We found one Friday. We knew we loved it. We knew we had to move fast. Full price offer, 20% down. We're thinking, oh, we'll get it. And we were very happy, whatever. And then I get a call this morning that somebody came in and paid over asking price cash. 99% sure it's a rental agency that's just going to rent it out. I mean, what do we do? We've saved up the money to be able to look for houses, and not to mention this house was like sold in 2020 for like $70,000 and they wanted $240. Insane.
We all saw this coming. When you have fiscal problems in the economy and the stock market, people are going to start hoarding money.
The U.S. is in the midst of a bursting housing bubble, and it's going to be bad. It's going to make the 2008 housing bubble look like children's game or something like that. And you can see most of the evidence of it here right on TikTok, but it's not really being discussed, it seems, in the mainstream media to the extent that it should be. So first of all, you can start with Airbnbs. There's all of these people who own Airbnbs, and they're trying to figure out why nobody's renting their Airbnb. And the discussion here on TikTok is, well, nobody's coming for our Airbnbs. Is it because of security, that they're freaked out about security and being spied upon? Some people are postulating that taking out the garbage is the main reason. People don't want to rent an Airbnb because they don't want to have to clean up after the fact, or they don't like the prices, or they look at the convenience of hotels. Well, hotels are also not getting a lot of customers right now. And the reason for that is because nobody wants to come to the U.S. The U.S. relies on a lot of tourism. Take a look at other countries in the world and tourism to those countries. Very few countries experience or enjoy the benefit of people from around the world wanting to come there. Well, nobody's coming to the U.S. anymore. The tourism numbers are going to drop well over 50%, I would imagine, in the next couple of years because of Trump, because he's declared war on the rest of the world. The countries that were his allies and were the allies of the U.S. have been declared the enemies. Canada, right there, the neighbor that used to be able to trust them, has now recognized that we no longer can trust the U.S. And people don't want to come to the U.S. because they're worried about being picked up off the street and sent to a prison in El Salvador. And they don't want to come to the U.S. because it's just not cool to come to the U.S. anymore. This is not a place that is a country that is the light of liberty. It is now a country that has fallen into a fascist authoritarian dictatorship. It's just, it'd be like traveling to Nazi Germany prior to the start of the war, before 39. So people are looking at it and saying they don't want to come to the U.S. That's a huge cut to the U.S. economy. It's Europeans and Canadians mostly who were the ones who brought the money into the U.S. tourism industry. And so the reason Airbnbs are not getting rented is because the tourists aren't coming. And so there's lots of Airbnb owners right now who are looking at it saying, I don't even know if I can pay the mortgage on this thing, utilities or insurance for a building that I'm owning that generates no revenue for me and was a cash cow. Now think about the money that comes out of those people's pockets, right? They no longer have that money to spend, and so as a consequence, they are going to cut back, and that's just like a small percentage. Then think for a second about Canadians pulling the plug. So Canadians owned homes in Florida, and a lot of them have owned them for a long time. Some of them might be selling at a loss, but a lot of them have owned it for so long that they can afford to list it for a long time. Florida, Arizona, Texas, these are places where Canadian snowbirds used to come regularly. Every year people would think to themselves, I don't want to stay in Ontario for the winter when I'm 67 years old or 72 years old or what have you. These people don't want to get picked up off the street. They don't want to run the risk of being in the States, and they usually are affluent enough that they can afford to go somewhere else. So they're going to go to Mexico, they're going to go to Spain, they're going to go to other places that are warm, and they're selling their places. So that's a flood of listings. And all of the people who are living there, who are trying to pay their mortgages and trying to get by, are facing a cut in tourists coming, right? So that pulls that money out of the local society, and then they're seeing their housing prices drop. And suddenly you've no longer got any equity in your house, and you've got another problem. You're in Florida, you're in Texas. Insurance companies know that climate change is real, right? And so that's the reason they're not providing people with insurance. But usually it's a part of your mortgage contract that you've got to have insurance on your house. So what happens when nobody will insure your house? You've got to provide a document to the bank that shows that you've got insurance. And you can't sell your house right now because your house is worth less than the mortgage amount. This has got to be the situation for lots of people. And if you look at the number of listings in Florida, the number of listings in Arizona, this is just the start, right? It's just the start, because it'll have a feedback loop. Then you've got all of these American government workers who've been laid off. So Washington, D.C., all of the listings have shot up there, and across the country. I mean, in a lot of these areas, the U.S. government employed people when there wasn't any other industry there, for the purpose of basically spreading around the wealth. Those people had to be employed. They, were providing a valuable service to the American population, to the United States. But they've been laid off. They no longer are adding that valuable service, and all of those other industries that service those those organizations also will be looking at laying off their staff. So there'll be that catastrophic flow. But also, they won't have any money. And so in lots of poor areas where, there might be some government office that existed there, partially to be able to provide the service and partially because it could exist anywhere in the U.S., and they put it there somewhere where it would help the local economy, all of those things are going to come out. So that is going to reduce demand for any houses, right? It's going to cut demand, and it's going to just lead to people not having the money to buy new houses and selling the houses they've got because they need the money. They've been laid off. They're going to be looking at reducing their lifestyle, and some people are going to end up homeless, and some people are going to end up in living in apartments, and some people are going to end up moving in with other family members. So you've got this catastrophic sort of unfolding of it. And Texas and Florida right now are ground zero. Florida certainly is ground zero. But think about the loss of revenue for the local governments, like the local, and I mean state governments. Like Florida is going to lose so much revenue from losing all of these tourists. People do not want to come to the States right now. And of course, we're boycotting the US. One of the things that Americans don't seem to realize is that their products are sold around the world. Whereas, Canadian products, you may not find it in some Australian home or something like that. You might not find it, a Canadian product in a Chinese home or in an English home, British home, in Europe. But you'll find American products everywhere, and products and services and things that are licensed, and the money goes back to the U.S. and it provides the foundation of the U.S. economy. And most Americans, because they don't travel, don't realize that. And when they do travel, they're like, oh, they see their own products there in part of the economy somewhere else, and they think that that's just the natural state of things. It's not. And of course, the world is boycotting the U.S. So that money flowing back to the U.S. from the global economy is, of course, going to hit the U.S. and it's going to start this cascading. It has already started, this cascading effect, where the U.S. economy is going to shrink, and it's going to be harder and harder for state governments to pay their debt and to provide services, which is going to make the neighborhoods much less attractive, and it's going to make it much harder to sell your home. So, what we had in 2008 was there was a general overall strong economy. The U.S. government was bringing in money and good tax revenue for a long time. They could afford to bail out the banks. Will they be able to afford to bail out the banks, or will they even think about doing it? They probably won't even do it because they're ideologically opposed to it. But will they be in a position, or would they bail out the banks in circumstances as we watch the contraction of the U.S. economy as it shrinks, their tax revenue base shrinks? Remember, they already have to borrow huge, ridiculous sums of money to service their debt. How do you service your debt, if you can't borrow anymore because nobody wants to lend you any money, and your tax base is shrinking and you've got less money coming in? So right now, if you are looking at your home and you're potentially underwater in the U.S., you've got to be looking at it and worried. But I would imagine that U.S. houses are going to take a 40% cut over the next couple of years, and this will last because this is lasting damage that's being caused by the Trump administration when they formed NAFTA and the USMCA. It was because they wanted cheap goods from our countries in order to make their products cheaper so they could compete on the international market. Now they don't seem to want to sell on the international market. Nobody wants to buy the products anymore because we've been declared as enemies, despite the fact that we've been, long-standing solid allies. Nobody's buying F-35s anymore, right? And so Lockheed Martin is starting to panic. That's going to kick the crap out of the housing market in those areas where those products are manufactured for export. This will be grim, and it's going to be much worse than 2008. And if you experienced 2008 and you forgot about it, you're going to get a very painful reminder of how bad it is when an economy starts to collapse and the biggest asset people have, their house, loses a massive amount of its value and becomes something that you can't sell. It's not liquid, and you can't get out of it, and you're trapped.
Someone just bought $6.5 million worth of puts against the 30-year Treasury bond. Now, that may not sound like a big deal, but what it means is that there's somebody out there with a lot of money who just bet that the demand for the 30-year Treasury note is going to go way down. And when the demand for a Treasury note goes down, the interest rate you have to offer to get people to buy that note goes up. The less the demand, the more the bribe to buy it. So what that means is that they can see that the demand for these 30-year Treasury notes is going to dwindle to nothing, and they're seeing a big ability to gain profit off shorting them. That means they're betting that the 30-year interest rate is going to go through the roof. What that means is that 30-year mortgage notes or 30-year bank loans for mortgages, those rates are also going to go through the roof. Right now, they're between 6.8 and 7.2% on some mortgage yields. So we could be looking at upwards of 10 to 12% for a 30-year mortgage, which will pretty much decimate the real estate market. So we have that to look forward to. roof. What that means is that 30-year mortgage notes or 30-year bank loans for mortgages, those rates are also going to go through the roof. Right now, they're between 6.8 and 7.2% on some mortgage yields. So we could be looking at upwards of 10 to 12% for a 30-year mortgage, which will pretty much decimate the real estate market. So we have that to look forward to.
So basically, if you don't already own a home, you might as well just go ahead and murderize your parents for that inheritance house, because you ain't buying shit anytime soon. I want to touch on something he said, that if you go in the comments in this video, I don't think anyone has, maybe a few people have, but I don't see any comments on it. The less demand there is, the more bribes to make people want to buy the treasury bonds, right? So that means there's a billionaire out there, probably Trump himself, maybe his friends. There's someone out there that basically knows that treasury bonds, the 30-year treasury bonds, are going to dip massively. It's going to fuck up the economy, right? But that's the thing I'm talking about here, is the bribe. That means very soon, or not very soon, that means sometime in the future, when our treasury bonds, 30-year treasury bonds drop, the US government is going to have to do something. Bribes. Remember, he said bribes. The US government is going to have to do something to get other countries to start buying it. Which brings us to the question, what do you think this bribe is going to be? Oh man, it's going to be a crazy transference of wealth, because when that shit goes down, interest rate goes up, everything is going to, oh my God. The billionaire class are going to own everything. They're going to buy, like in the next few months, whenever this happens, man, God, I wish I had money. For real. If I wish I had money so I could just join the exploitative class. Because this is going to be an amazing thing. All right. Ooh, I just realized something. All right, I got to give this disclaimer. Talked about murderizing parents. So one of the main thing my stepmother, my father's wife, I don't know why I call her stepmother, that bitch. The main thing she used to drive a wedge between my dad and I was, so in Nigeria, there's this thing we have called deal. I don't want to say Nigeria, in northern Nigeria at least, it's called deal in northern Nigeria, in my generation at least, which was basically if your parents were more on the higher on the echelon on the socioeconomic scale, you were meant to do something to show how cool you were. You were meant to steal money at home and blow it. I know it sounds stupid, but it's a thing that kids did, is you'd steal money and you would blow it. So the more money you stole and the quicker you blew it, the more your reputation meant something. So I did my deal. I won't say how much, but I blew it in like 3 months, bought a Mercedes, bought a bunch of shit. And then when it was over with, my father's wife basically got in my dad's ear and was telling him, I'm this hopeless, I'm useless, and I got no plans. I don't want to do anything in life. I'm just waiting for him to die so I can get his inheritance. And that was basically how she convinced him I was like a waste man who was only living to watch his father die so I could inherit. And I made this joke about anyways, shit is about to get expensive.